Hello everyone, and very good afternoon to each and everyone who is listening this class. And this class is all about learning a database management systems. Right. Yesterday we were been learning about how to design ER diagrams. It's something called it as entity and relationship diagrams. So that for that learning of ER diagrams, we have been learned about what is an entity set, what is relation set, what is an attribute, and what is a composite attribute, and what is a derived attribute. These are the few things we were being learned in the last session. And so, let me quickly revise what we have, at the end of yesterday's session, we have concluded that we can design an ER diagram with the help of simple graphics. I mean to say, if you are well known awareness or if you are have an idea on how to design a flow chart for a particular algorithm or for a particular solving a particular problem, we basically go for writing an algorithm and followed by we basically write a flow charts. If you have a bit idea on writing a flow charts, so that writing a ER diagrams is pretty simple, and it would be very important factor in terms of databases designers. So, database designers has to start their work from the ER diagram. First, they have to come with a requirement. The requirement has to be first represented in a diagrammatic format with the help of ER diagrams. Then they will learn about the next part. Yes. So, first thing is, what is an entity? Entity is something which anything is in databases, we basically call it as an entity. Anything in a real world, we basically call it as an entity. A person is an entity, alright. A laptop is an entity, a desktop is an entity, or water bottle is an entity, or chair is an entity. All of these are entities which represents you a few attributes. For example, if I say a human being is an attribute which have a few attributes like eyes, nose, hands, legs and all. These are the comes under an attributes format. Whereas, this can be related to another one, that is something called it as relationship. Whenever you want to related a data from one entity, or you are getting the data, or you are borrowing the data from another entity, when you want to combine it, we basically are done with the relations of both informations. So, that is what we were being learned in yesterday's session. Let me show you how it will be works. Okay. Now, let me just show you this how it will be works in the yesterday's session. Yes. So, if you remembered or not yesterday's session, I was stopped my class at this particular point. At this particular point, whatever I was being taught, say for example, rectangles which has been represented here, right. You can see that something has been represented in a rectangular format, that everything is called it as an entities. Please note it down. If something has been represented in this particular format, we basically call it as an entities, and followed by a square, or you can call it as a diamond symbol. If it is presented in between an entity, this is something called it as a relationship. Right. So, whenever you want to make a relation of an entity called customer, an entity called loan, between that if I want to make any relation, then I can go for borrow, or that something called it as relationship. And here the lines, here the straight lines will be represented here the sets of relations, and followed by something has been written here in ellipse format. Please see that something has been written in ellipse format. These are something call it as an attributes, right. So, these attributes again divided into a different parts. Right now, I do not have anything which has been represented in a double as well as dashed, okay. But something has been represented here, that is something called underline sign here. There are the two attributes which is represented by underline sign here. These underline signs suggest to you that it is a primary keys of a particular table. So, you may get a doubt that what is this primary key, right. So, you have to wait for some more days, maybe 1 day or 2 days time to discuss about the primary key things. So, whenever you well known about primary key, then it is very easy to remember. And very important thing I want to tell you at this moment, every entity which is presented in every database, every entity, let me talk about a table is an entity. In every entity, if you want to have a particular column, has to have a primary key column. So, nothing but every table has to consist of a column, that is your ID column table. For sure, it has to be there. Yes. So, this is what the simple representation I have completed yesterday's part. Yes or no? Right. So, that is the reason I am quickly repeating that thing what we have done in yesterday's part. So, we were being learned about, first thing is a rectangular format is represents you as a entities, and followed by if something is represented in diamond symbol between entities, we basically write it as the relationships of those entities, and then ellipse is something which has to be represented with an attributes, and ellipse something has been represented and it has to be have underscore line or underline, that we basically call it as a primary keys of a particular table. Yes, I hope you guys all got the bit information, or you got a bit about the ER diagrams, right. So, now let me go to some more extension of this. Okay. So, ER diagrams with a multi-valued as well as derived attributes. Okay. So, please see that yesterday I was talking about the multi-valued as well as derived data types also, right. So, how do you represent the derived data types into the ER diagram specifications? Please remember this, there are the few things which has been represented yesterday, and here today I just want to extend it. The extension, what is an extension I want to do in this is, I want to represent what is a multi-valued and what is a derived data type. See that in the previous slide I was been talking about something has been represented with a double ellipse, that represents you multi-valued attribute, and something has been represented dashed with something call it as derived attribute. Same thing if you just look after this particular diagram, so that you will understand easily here. See that customer is an entity, right. Here customer is an entity which have a different attributes here. Let me talk about what is an attribute first. Name is one attribute, customer ID is a primary key attribute because it has been represented with underscore sign. If something has been represented with underscore sign, that is something call it as your primary key, and the followed by there is something has been represented in two lines. If something has been represented with the double ellipse, that value we can call it as multi-valued. Yes, nothing but a phone number can be a number of phone numbers, not only a single phone number, and followed by date of birth is again one more entity, or one more attribute for the customer entity. Now, you can just look after here, there is an attribute which has been represented with a dashed, not dotted, it is something like dashed, anything. See that here dashed ellipse, okay, something has been represented with dashed ellipse, we denoted as derived attribute. See that here nothing but age is something we can call it as a derived data type. Yes. So, customer have an attribute called address. Yes. So, these are the basic things. Okay. If you just observe carefully, these are the things which we basically represented as normally with this particular example. Now, let me quickly go to a little more extension on this. See that every name attribute, right, every name attribute, here this is one attribute, second attribute, third attribute, and fourth attribute, and fifth, and the last one is 6. These are the 6 basic attributes for the entity called customer. Once it has been returned with entity customer, again you can just quickly observe here, this name attribute again derived, right. So, these are the things we basically call it as the extension composite attributes for the name. Same you can see here address, address again have a street, city, state and zip code, and again street attribute again divided into multiple parts here. Yes. So, that is the reason this will be a multi-valued, nothing but this will be a multi-valued, and derived, this would be a derived, and the remaining things, this remaining things will be considered as composite. Yes. You understood this? Yes. Now, let me quickly repeat this. right? In this, what is a multi-valued? Multi-valued is a phone number is your multi-valued, followed by derived. Something has been represented with a dash, that is something called it as derived, and something has been represented with this particular example. Here this example and followed by this example. Yes, these two we basically call it as composite attributes, which again extended attributes of one to another one. Yes. So, this is what we have been learned. Okay. So, now let me go to one more example, so that we will finish it off this ER diagram things. Yes, relationships with attributes. Yes, see that as I have defined you previously with ER diagram, but here customer and account has been have a relation of a depositor, right. But this depositor will be accessed with a date called as access date, nothing but I can make join, I can just get the data of customer entity as well as account entity with the help of this one, right. So, that is what relationships with an attribute, for nothing but this relationship attribute has to be presented on first table as well as in second table. Right now, you can just assume that entity 1 is table 1, entity 2 is your table 2, right. So, if you observe carefully, it has to be have a column has to be presented in first table as well as in second table. With this particular depositor, we can able to build the data from with this particular both tables. That is what the major things which we have to learn about from this example. Yes. Now, let me quickly go to one more thing, so that we will just finish it off this particular things. Okay. Right. Roles. Yes, roles. Entity sets have a relation to be a distinct. I mean to say, sometimes it is distinct, sometimes not to be distinct. See that, for example, if I am talking about an employee, right. Employee is basically a entity in which a manager, not only a single manager, a worker, not only a single worker, nothing but multiple people will be presented works under single role. Yes. So, that is what we need to talk about here. It is not have much importance actually. If you are well aware of up to this, it is enough on the ER diagrams. Okay. So, now what is you guys has to need to do is, right. So, you need to do to design, for example, let us take an example as hospital management system, right. For this, I want you guys to design one ER diagram with multiple entities. For example, you are taking a 2 entities, here 3 entities, here 4 entities. Each and every candidate has to design one ER diagram with the help of the examples what we have finished. Okay. So, now what is actually I want to talk about in today's session is, today's session we are been talking about something called it as database architectures. Pretty important and very easy to learn. And if you are the developer or you are the designer of a database, first you have to choose what kind of architecture you want to choose first of all. Means what is the architecture? Once you have finished with the architecture, I mean once you decided that I want to use this particular architecture, once you have decided this architecture, the people will start developing that application. Yes. So, you mean to say that before you start developing an application by default, I mean as initially you are need to talk about something called it as DBMS architectures. Okay. Now, let me show you what are the different architectures are presented in your applications of databases. Right. There are the 3 database architectures are presented in the market. If you just see that slide, you will understand what are the architectures we have. Now, there are the 3 architectures we have, that is single tier architecture, 2 tier architecture and 3 tier architecture. Yes. So, first thing is I want to divide what is this tier first of all. I want you to understand first what is this tier is. Tier in the sense layer, right. Tier in the sense it is a layer. So, in development of databases we have a layers, different layers we have. Okay. Let me show you what are the layers are presented first, then we will come to conclusion here. Okay. First thing is layers. What are the layers are presented here? Okay. The first layer is a presentation layer, right. People usually call it as UI layer. Yes. And then people will usually second layer call it as business layer, right. So, now this will be a logical layer, some people will call it as logic layer, where a people will write their logic here. The next one is data layer or database layer, which interacted with a databases. Okay. So, this is your data layer. So, sometimes some people will call it as database layer also, right. So, these are the three layers are presented. What it mean to say that a presentation layer is? Presentation is a layer, right. This presentation layer will be interacts with end user, nothing but, for example, you have a Facebook website, right. You have a Facebook login page, that is something call it as your presentation layer, where every end user will be interacted here itself, right. So, our example, you can say Gmail login page, where your user will be interacted here itself. Okay. You can have a Twitter page, yes, everything is user will be interacted here. Okay. See that guys, right now nowadays everyone have a smartphones, right. Even the guy who doesn't know how to write his name, he is having a smartphone with him. But even he doesn't know the technology, still that guy is also using a Facebook, yes or no. If you observe carefully, there are a few people who doesn't know how to write his name, still that guy have a smartphone and that guy is also having a Facebook account also, yes. But just because of what they know how to write, how to just see that, means what, people will give you this layer to interact it with the end user, just they will give you this layer. But here this logic of this layer will be returned here, nothing but logic of that particular application. Logic of any application will be presented in your business layer, right. So, business layer nothing but here everything is something call it as a layers, which will be this layer is always written with some kind of logic. For example, if it is a login page, what kind of logic has to be written, right. So, if it is a registration page, what kind of logic is required? If I want to update a password, what kind of logic is required? All these things will be returned in your business layer. Yes, you understood? Yep. Now, once you done with this data, what the logic, whatever you have written, if you want to submit on the database, between your application and database layer, between your business layer and database, this data layer will be a mediator, nothing but it takes the input from business layer and it passes to a database, nothing but database directly will not interacted with the business layer, right. So, whereas business layer will not be interacted directly with the database. So, that what we need to do is, we need to write one mediator between your business layer and a database, that is something call it as your data layer. This data layer will be responsible for the logic has to be written in business layer will be submitted on the database, and the logic which has been written from the database will again given back to your business layer, nothing but your application. If you see carefully, your application will be look like this, right. For example, this is your logic layer, nothing but I can say this is your databases, right. This database, in the sense this can be presented any place in the world, right. Here some people will be interacted with your application, right. This is something call it as presentation layer, or some people will call it as UI, user interface, where user will be interacted here. For example, I am a user, I will basically interacted with here only. So, what will happen is this request will be processed to a business layer. Whatever I am requesting, the request is processed by business layer, and this business layer will be interacted with the data layer. Here the every interaction related to a database will be written here, the logic will be written here, the user will be interacted here. So, as soon as that your request will be comes. Yes, these are the three layers. Now, what is this tiers or? Yes, you understood first of all what is that three layers now? Yes. Now, let me quickly repeat what is the three layers are. Three layers are, the first layer is presentation layer, the layer where a user will be interacted, and second layer is business layer where a user data or user information or user requirement can be written in the form of business, right? That can be written in your business layer. And the third one is to interact with the databases, you are required some kind of information. The information has to be written in data layer. So with these three layers, you can build an architecture in three ways. One is single tier, two tier and three tier. So first thing is, what is this single tier is, right? First we talk about what is the just overview of this architecture is, right? So architecture overview is, see that the design of DBMS is depends on the architecture, right? Mean to say that you need to design any database, you need to design any DBMS application. First it will be depends on architecture. It can be centralized or decentralized by or hierarchical. Sometimes it may be hierarchical format, sometimes it may be centralized, sometimes it can be a decentralized, anything is fine, right. The architecture of DBMS can be seen on either single tier or multi-tier, mean to say that sometimes your architecture will be on only one layer or else the architecture can be of multiple layers. That is the reason we have divided this application into three different layers. Let me talk about after this. Alright. So, an entire layer architecture divides the whole system into related independent modules, right. Mean to say that, for example, if it is entire, maybe a 2 tier, maybe 3 tier, maybe 4 tier, what it is basically mean to say is, it mean to say that your applications can be divided into multiple sub-blocks. The sub-blocks we usually call it as independent blocks, so that which can be independently modified, altered, changed and replaced. Yes. So, now let me tell you quickly what is this architecture is all about. First thing is, if you want to design any database management system in the market, for example, you want to design an application database for hospital management system, or else for example, I want to design an application for online shopping. So, this everything first, as a designer you need to first let us know what kind of architecture you need to use in this, right. And what is this architecture will do is, architectures are of different types, maybe single tier, maybe 2 tier, maybe 3 tier, maybe entire. The tier is got increasing, nothing but the moment the tier layer, the layers are increasing, automatically what will happen is your application, the application whatever you want to design, that application will be divided into sub-blocks, right. It can be divided into sub-blocks. Sub-blocks in the sense every sub-block we usually call it as a module. So, if I divide that application into modules, what will happen is, if you divide that application into modules, you can make simple, your application makes very simple, because of what, you can create it, you can alter it, you modify it, then that will be very simple. Am I very clear on this? So that architectures are one of the heart, one of the core point to design the any database systems in the application development. So, now let me talk about first single tier architecture, very much important here. Single tier architecture, what is this single tier architecture do? Yes, first let me know once, okay. In single tier architecture, the database systems is only an entity. Yes, I will talk about it, where the user directly sits on the DBMS and user set, right. The next thing is, any changes done here will directly done on the DBMS itself, right. It does not possible handy tools for end users. Database designers and programmers normally prefer to use a single tier architecture when it is installed only on single machine. I will tell you best example what is this, right. As I am talking about single tier architecture, single tier architecture we in generally consist of your business layer, your presentation layer, your data layer, will all these three layers will integrated at only one machine, will be integrated only on one machine. Nothing to I mean to say that, for example, I'll take a best example as any internet software like a Firefox. You will download a software from internet, right? That is something called your Firefox.exe or like Chrome.exe. There are the few files will be downloaded from internet, right? As soon as if you download it, you will install it on your machines, right? Yes or no? 100%, absolutely, that will be installed on your machine. The moment when application is installed on your machine, I mean to say that these three layers, your presentation layer, your data layer as well as your business layer will be integrated only onto single operating system. Mean to say that whatever the softwares which we are using on a single machine, everything comes under the one tier architectures. Am I very clear? Now let me repeat the things again, because these are the things you may get or you may face in interview when HR asks you this kind of questions, right? They ask you what is a single tier architecture. The single tier architecture mean to say that everything is integrated at one particular place. What are the things are integrated at one place? The integration can be of presentation layer, business layer as well as data layer. These three layers will be integrated only onto a single machine. That will be called it as single tier architecture. For example, the apps what you are installing on your mobile devices, which will be the same. Yes, the apps which are installing on my desktop, everything comes under a single tier architectures. Yes, so hope you understand this, right? Please note down these points. It is bit easy to remember as well as which has to be very much importance in the market for this. Please note it down everyone if possible. Yes, once you finished it, let me show you with simple example here. See that your single tier architecture consists of your application and your databases. Your application consists of what? Presentation layer as well as business layer. All these things, whatever I am going to show you here, right? So I am going to show you one application layer, I am showing you a business layer, I mean to say database. This application layer again consists of two more parts here, presentation layer and business layer. All these two will be installed only on single machine, right? Will be installed only on single machine, so that this kind of applications are called it as single tier applications. Am I very clear? Nothing but single tier application. The best example for single tier application is anything which is installed on your mobile devices. Anything you install on your mobile devices, you will install the different apps from App Store, right? All the things will comes from here. Anything which you install on your desktop or on your laptop, right? So all these things comes under single tier architecture. Mean to say that the people already used an architecture for single tier to design that application is. Am I very clear, guys? Please draw this information so that whenever you refer it for the next time, it will be very easy for you to understand here. All right, everyone is done? Yes. Now let me go to a two-tier architecture. What is this two-tier architecture does contains? Yes, the two-tier architectures contains, if an architecture of DBMS is two-tier, mean to say that I was decided that I want to design the two-tier architecture on this application. Because of what? I have a requirement. The requirement is then it must have an application through which the DBMS has to be accessed, right? Where the programmers uses two-tier architecture where they have to access the DBMS from another application, from the same application sometime, right? Here the application tier is entirely independent of a database in terms of operation and the design and the programming is. The best thing I will tell you, the best thing about the two-tier architecture is, as you can just see an example as your Bluetooth of your mobile device is the best example for two-tier architecture. Because of what I want, because of what is this two-tier architecture, Bluetooth is designed with a two-tier architecture, nothing but this application is able to access only within the two devices. Yes, if you are using a Bluetooth on your mobile, whenever you transfer the data from one device to another device, your data will be transferred from data one to another layer, right. So, whenever you transferring this particular data, your application of Bluetooth is designed with a two-tier, means what, sometime your application here, sometime your application here, sometime your database here, sometime your database here. Mean to say that, for example, imagine that I have a two mobile devices, device 1 and device 2. In device 1, there is some data I want to pass it to device 2, right. So, whenever I am passing the device 1 data to device 2 data, nothing but device 1 is itself is consist of some database, nothing but the data whatever you want to send, that is consist of database. So, this is what database, nothing but your application and your database is in one place, your client is at another place, right. So, this kind of applications are called it as two-tier architecture. Am I very clear? Am I very clear? So, the architecture of this will be looks like this. See that here you have an application, you have a database, and the other side also you have an application, you have a database, right, and the database will be a centralized database. That is what the Bluetooth will be used, right. I will just show you with some very good example rather than this, right. For example, if I am talking about your Bluetooth application, right, this is your device 1 where I want to transfer the data from device 1 to your device 2, right, two devices I want to show, right. What will happen is there are the three layers we have, right. What is the three layers? One is presentation layer, second one is business layer, third one is data layer. Yes. Now, what will happen is anytime if I say this is your server machine where I am transferring the data, right, and here your data will be presented on your client. Yes. So, whenever I am transferring the data in the sense your both the devices right, sorry, right, let me quickly, right. So, this is what your data will be transferred from here, this will be transferred from here, right. So, in both these parts, here you will have a presentation layer, here also you will have a presentation layer, here also, nothing but the interface of Bluetooth will be presented in both the devices, but data will be presented sometime here, right, sometimes your data will be presented here, yes or no, right. This architecture we basically call it as two-tier architecture, right. So, how this I can call it as two-tier in the sense presentation will be resides on the both sides, your client machine have a presentation layer, your server is also have a presentation layer, yes, but database will be optional, either it can be present here sometimes it will be presented here, okay. But business layer again will be presented on the both sides, here you will have a business layer, here also you have a business layer. If I am passing the data from device 1 to device 2, so that your application data will be presented here, so that this is your business 1, so that nothing but database will be presented here. So, for example, if a device data is transferring from the second device to first device, nothing to say that this will be a actor, nothing but the database will be presented on second device, nothing but the data will be transferred from here to here. With this part, your architecture of two-tier or of two types, one is thin server and fat client, second one is thin client right, and fat server. What it mean to say this? For example, your database is presented on the client machine. Your database is presented on client machine. Then I can call it as your data is something, call it as a thin server and fat client. Nothing but database has to be presented on this device. For example, your database design is presented on the server side, then I can call it as thin client and fat server. Nothing but at the time your data has to be presented in this particular place. So that this two-tier architecture will be used for developing a few applications in the market. That is the best example I can show you right now is a Bluetooth or ShareIt. All these examples, all these applications will be developed by some of the database designers with the help of two-tier architecture. Hope you understand the two-tier architecture. Let me just summarize what is a two-tier architecture is. Two-tier architecture on the both client side and server side, in both the things your presentation layer will be presented, your database will be presented either on server or else on client. If your server data is presented on the server side, then I can call it as fat server and thin client. If a same database is presented on client side, I can call it as fat client and thin servers. Am I very clear? These are the things which you need to remember, because it is one of the most important architecture which will be used in the market currently also. So that's the reason you would find an examples like Bluetooth, ShareIt, all these applications are examples of your two-tier architectures. Yes. Now this is, let me show you the slide again. These are the architecture for two-tier. Please just write this particular architecture so that it would be very easy for you to understand when you refer these things for the next time. All right. Next, I am talking about three-tier architecture. In three-tier architecture, very important thing. So nothing but the software industry itself is started basically long back, almost 4 or 5 years back or 6 years back. Your software industry used to develop most of the applications from three-tier architecture, right? There is an architecture called three-tier which is very much popular, as like you have an architecture like right now there is a popular architecture in the market, that is MVC architecture, right? There is an architecture called MVC that is one of the most popular architecture in the market, stands for Model View Controller architecture. Before this architecture, entire software industry used to define on three-tier or else entire architecture. What will happen with a three-tier architecture? What will happen with entire architecture? Yes, very simple. This three-tier architecture has, we have a 3 layers: presentation layer, business layer as well as data layer. These 3 layers will be worked separately, nothing but your presentation layer is different, your business layer is different, your data layer is different. 3 different layers will be presented, and all these 3 layers will be interconnected to a database with the help of data layer. Now, so that I just want to show you with a very simple things, right? See that a three-tier architecture separates, it starts from the each other based on the complexity of the users and how their data is preventing or presenting from the databases. Yes, the first one is what? Database layer, data layer. So what is this layer? This layer, the data resides along with its query processing languages. Query processing languages, I mean to say that it is as simple as that, SQL. So what we are going to learn with the practical information with this particular examples, who have the relations to define the data and the constraint to that level, and the application layer, that is your middle level layer. The middle level layer is this layer resides on application server and the programs to access from the database. I mean to say simple thing, I was told you about the business layer, right? The business layer, I mean to say that your application layer. And the last one is user tier, nothing but presentation layer. This is the layer where it will be resides on the client machine, nothing but on your browsers you can see, on your mobile devices you can able to see this. These are the three layers will be worked separately, individually, whenever the problem is most complexity. Alright, so I just want to tell you one simple thing. For example, you want to design an application which is looks very complexity and that is a very large application. Whenever you want to look your application is very large, when you want to divide that application into multiple sub-blocks, then you have to use a terminology called a three-tier architecture. What is this three-tier architecture going to do right now is, it divides the three layers of every application into three different parts, so that how it looks basically. Yes, I'm just taking one more example here so that. Yes, right. So I just want to show you right now with the three-tier architecture. This is your presentation layer where every user will be interacted here, and followed by there is one more architecture we have, nothing but your business layer, or I can call it as application layer, right? And next one is data layer, will be of your database layer, right? And the last one thing is, this will be connected to an application of database, right? So just want to show you right now. So this is your presentation layer, PI. This is your application layer, AI, right? Otherwise I'll write it as the full name, application layer. So nothing but here you need to write the logic for a specific application, alright. So next thing is, the next one is what? Your data layer. This will be your database. So what will happen right now is, this three-tier architecture will divide these three layers into different parts. Here also different part, here also your different part. But what will happen is, when a user is sending a particular request, your presentation request goes to application layer, your application request go to a data layer, and this request goes to a database, right? And from the database your request will come to a data layer, again your request will come here, again your request will come here, so that the end user can able to see the output what is able to see on the browser, right? So that you can just see that database layer, first thing is your presentation layer, nothing but this is the layer where the user is interacting, right? And the second layer is your presentation layer, right? So it will be resides on the application server. There are the different servers will be there, and this layer will be on application server. It would be on application server, where your application has to be deployed, not developed, it is a deployed. There is a lot of difference between a development and a deployment. Right now I am talking about deployment, nothing but your application is deployed in a particular server, that is your application server. So now your next thing is your database server, this is your database server, right? So these are the things can be divided into your application. Anything whatever you are using in the examples right now, mostly I can say most of the applications whatever you see right now in the market, all of the best examples of your three-tier architecture. As you can see the WhatsApp, you can say Twitter, you can see a Facebook, you can see an application of Gmail. All this comes under the processing of three-tier architecture, not three-tier, it is the next level of three-tier architectures. Yes, am I very clear? Yes. So now let me quickly show you this. Please try to note down these points, which is what I am showing you on the screen right now. Because as you are in interviews, they may 100% I can say 90% of chances you have questions from this particular application. You can have a chances, they can ask you a questions from what is one tier, what is two tier, but there are most chances for three tier. You can have a chances questions from mostly from three tier. Yes, please note it down. What is presentation layer? What is the database layer? What is the user interface? Nothing but presentation tier. Yes, quickly, fast, so that your application looks like this. right? See that your application server will be presented here, your interactions goes to a databases, there are the number of clients can be connected at a time to this particular server, so that your server is able to process your request to a database. Nothing but this is a place where your presentation layer will be presented. Your presentation layer will be presented on your client machine, and this will be of your application layer, nothing but your AI, and this is your data layer. Alright. So, nothing but the layers whatever I was divided into 3 different parts, depends on my requirement. So, that this kind of application we basically call it as a 3-tier applications. Alright, please note, draw this diagram. Yes. So, what actually we need to be learn about all these things is, we are tomorrow's class we are going to talk about the starting about the how you basically code in your databases. So, before you code with the databases, you need to know what are the products are presented in the market. These are the present application market, these are the present databases, and this is the people will be presented here. See that a computer associated, there is a product, call it as Ingrids. IBM is one of the popular RDBMS vendor, that is RDBMS product is DB2. Informax software, that is something called Informax, INFORMAX, this is some. And Oracle Corporation have a database, call it as Oracle. Whereas Microsoft Corporation, we have something called it as MS Access, that is an older version. And right now version is Microsoft Corporation have another version called MS SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. MySQL AB have a database called MySQL. NCR Translate PostgreSQL, we have a database called PostgreSQL. And Sybase, we have a database called Sybase 11. So, these are the different vendors and their products. Please note it down in interview or on your examinations, they may ask you what are the DBMS vendors and what are the products of these DBMSs. Please you need to note down this particular box, so that whenever anyone is asked you what are the vendors and what are the products, so that you are able to give answers very quickly with this thing. You can remember at least 5 to 6 from this point. So, like Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, IBM, DB2, Postgre, MySQL, all these things you can just remember from this particular thing, because as one of the product of RDBMS, I am going to use from tomorrow's session to give you the examples how your databases are working as. Yes, very important thing, situations where I have to use my databases. Yes or no? Because as I am talking about DBMSs frequently, right? As I am talking about DBMSs, I am talking about the vendors and I am talking about the products and all. But what is intentionally I want to tell you is, where is actually the necessary to use your databases? Yes? Yes, I will just show you that. See that? You can have an application of calculator. That application required your DBMS products. A CD and DVD burner softwares, we require DBMSs, and Photoshop, etc., your Facebook, your Photoshop, whatever it is, everything comes under your databases, and here is not required. Just see that these are the not required software, and there are a few required software I will tell you. These are the situations where databases are not necessary, right? Calculator application is not required. Your CD and DVD burner software is not required, your Photoshop is not required, your audio and video players are not required. But where is actually use of this? You have a use of these DBMS products in the software industry, where you want to store large amount of data every day or every minute, which is generated by a particular users. Yes or no? For example, I need a DBMS, I need a RDBMS products, like if I am using an application called Facebook, it is generating a large data every day, right? If I am using a YouTube, this YouTube also generating a large data every day. Alright, Twitter, every day that is generating a large amount of data, right? Social networking. For example, broadcasting, nothing but a weather forecasting. So every day they used to generate terabytes of memory. In that time, if I want to store the terabytes of memory, I required some kind of place where it has to be integrated all the places at one particular time. So that is one thing we just need to remember, where actually DBMSs are used, where DBMSs are not required. Some people ask you where is not required, where is required. Whenever the data is large, then I can go for databases. Whenever the data is less, I can go for file. Whenever not required, calculator application, CD or DVD burning applications, or Photoshop applications, or audio or video players, all these applications are not required any kind of DBMSs. Right, that's it for today's session. Right, so today I just want to conclude the session for today now. So in this today's session, I'm just whatever I was covered today. I was covered the few things today in the today's session is first thing is I was completed ER diagrams. Then after that I was started about the different tier of DBMS architectures, in which 1 tier, 2 tier, 3 tier architectures will be used. Right. Thank you so much for listening to us. Have a great day. If anyone required to learn about the architectures of DBMS, please share this video with those people. Then it will be helpful for those people to learn the architectures very easily, very quickly, without having any problematic things. If you have any problems, please post your doubts on the comment window. So as soon as that, I'll get back to you with the doubts. Right. Thank you so much for listening to us. Have a great day. By the way, I'm Anil Kumar, trainer of APSSDC.